Hey guys, so I said my next video was probably gonna be a TVT or a TVP, but I lied, and it's gonna be another TvZ. Thank God Blizzard finally released the Season 2 ladder maps. I was like waiting so long for them. I was waiting like a kid waits to meet Santa Claus when he feeds Santa Claus cookies, or Santa Claus waiting all year for Christmas to come around because it's his favorite holiday of the year. Yeah, I think, or maybe it's not a holiday for him because he technically works on that day. Anyways, the new maps are in, and I'll just bring it up on the screen. We got Sejong Station. It's been used in the Pro League. We have Overgrowth LE. It's gonna be a GSL map, I guess. And same with Merry-Go-Round. It says it's another GSL map. And Way Station, which is not a GSL map, but it has alternate cross position spawns, which is kind of interesting. It'll kind of be like, I guess the best way to think of it is like a Frost or Alter Zeme, where there's either cross positions or there's like close horizontal vertical positions. And what Way Station does is it takes that one step farther and creates I'm pretty sure like it's kind of a bit asymmetrical. One of them's like a more macro distance, another is a more rush oriented distance, so it'll be pretty interesting to take a look and see how that map impacts the metagame of StarCraft 2. But for now, as soon as I saw King Sejong Station, I got really excited because not only does that look like a pretty decent map, especially for TvZ, we've also seen a bunch of games on it already. And to kind of like start the new ladder season off before it's even begun, this VOD is going to be about TvZ on Sejong Station and how you should be playing the map, such as like expanding patterns, if you can bio or mech. I guess I would say macro or all-in games, but this map is kind of a bit too big to be playing a all-in kind of style. So, the first game I want to show you guys is between Maru and Sulky. It was played January 20th, 2014 on Sejong Station. This is one of the first maps that came out. It is, or no, it's one of the first times that the map was played on when it came out. So, let's just go over here.
Mentioned before, my shoes are
Mute the casters, and we're on. So, while this game is, while this game is kind of like starting up, I just want to like go into the actual game over here and take a look at this map. This is where Maru starts, and this is where Sulky is. So, alright, whatever, I'll just leave it on my vision. So, as you guys can see, this is the largest zoomed out view. The main is a pretty big place. There's a lot of area here for Mutalisk Harass or drop potential. The natural is relatively safe. The ramp is quite wide, but that's neutralized by the relatively large rush distance it takes for you to reach the other side of the base. And if you go like here, I'm gonna pause it because it might take some time to explain it. But if you go from, let's say here, like your regular natural, and then you go to the shortest rush distance possible, which is all the way here, and then all the way here, and then all the way around here. I mean, it's pretty big. And on top of that, there's rocks blocking the short rush distance to your natural. And if you go from like this natural area to this natural area, let's just take a look from here to the regular one without the rocks. So you would have to go here, then you have to like turn around, go here, go through here, and then go here. So it's a very long rush distance, which makes this big open ramp not so bad in this matchup. And these rocks also play an interesting role because if you break them down earlier on, you do have a shorter attack distance to your opponent's base. So it's just a really creative map. And zooming back out, we go to the third, and like, not even looking at the third specifically, but there's just so much dead airspace. I mean, we're gonna see a lot of Mutalisk Karask, a lot of drops being utilized, and it's not even like a really bad dead airspace. It's just really far behind. So if you do choose to drop, you're gonna be putting your units a bit out of position. Unlike Polar Night, where the map was small enough so that you could safely get away. I really think the size helps to bring out all of this map's unique characteristics. So this is the natural, this is the third base. Looks pretty defendable. And then here's, you can either take a fourth over here, a fourth over here, or a fourth over here. So there's a bunch of possible different map expansion patterns as well. And lastly, we have the two watchtowers that provide vision to about up to here, I think. Oh, cool. So let's say like the Zerg player usually takes their fourth base over here, cause main, natural, third, and then fourth, and then like fifth. Well, if we take a look here, there's this really abusable fourth base location, but it's once again, no, it's not walled off. Okay, it's not walled off by rocks. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, there's just a lot of different pathways you can take, and then you have to bust down those rocks, or you can just go up here, and then you can take the watchtower, and then you can go this way, behind the fourth base, or you can even just go like this way, straight into the fourth base. So there's a lot of different possibilities going on with this map, and it'll be very interesting to see what kind of strategies are used on this map. Wow, I think that's a Baneling. Whoa, that's pretty cool. Alright, so we got Sulky and we got Maru, two very, very good TvZ players. This is, I believe, the time when Widow Mines got nerfed. It was played January 20th. And in this game, Maru chooses not to get a single Widow Mine, and he instead opts to get Hellbat Thor. Although it doesn't look as crisp as his games in the Code S round of 8 looked, using the same Thor Hellbat Marauder Marine style that is now taking over the Widow Mine's lack of usefulness in this matchup. Widow Mines are still useful to an extent, and they're still good units. They just don't play a very large role in this matchup anymore. And so right off the bat, we see Maru. He's going for a Reaper expand. This map, I believe, is safe enough to do a 14 command center build, but because of the large natural, that big ramp over here, it makes it very difficult to wall off. You might have to use a third command center to wall off and a bunch of depots if you want to get a complete wall off. So it's a lot safer to go for a Reaper expand because it deters aggression, and it also allows you to scout any possible aggression going on as well. And there's also the destructible rocks that the Zerg player may or may not choose to clear out early on. In this game, Sulky actually does go for a strategy that involves clearing out the rocks with a bunch of roaches, and then he does a big roach Zergling attack to it. Kind of like playing the map and utilizing one of its many different map mechanics that were built into it. So once again, I'm really pumped for this map. I can't wait to see and to play some games on it on ladder and to see it more often in tournaments. I think Pro League maps in general are very high-leveled maps. They're made by map makers from Brood War and from Kespa, I believe. So these people do have a lot of experience, and they know what to do to make a great map. Nothing out of the norm is going on. These players are both playing a pretty standard macro game that you'd see on any other map, really. So that's pretty cool to think about. It doesn't call for making completely new styles, but it is incentivized because of all the different possibilities. However, it does not, so far we haven't seen it rule out any old strategies yet. I mean, this strategy that Maru's doing, it is completely acceptable. He's just going for a Reaper Hellion expand, and he saved those Hellions over there. He's using the Reaper and the first two Hellions to scout for the third base, and then he left the other two Hellions there because running Lings in after you move the Reaper and the Hellions away, like no matter what the count is, whether it be 2 Hellions, 4 Hellions, or 6 Hellions, is a pretty common tactic, because if you don't have your units in position like Maru did, then you're going to take a substantial amount of damage to a few Zerglings. But that wasn't the case because Maru had his units in position. And as we can see, he's getting 6 Hellions, then he's getting 2 Engineering Bays, then he's going to get 2 Racks. Very, very, very standard. Slightly a bit more greedy by opting to go for the 2 Engineering Bays before the 2 Barracks, but once again, he can kind of do that because of the map distance. And Maru sacrificed his Reaper at about this time. This is when a 3 base all-in might hit, because Sulky is getting that third base, but it could have been a fake third base that he was taking. So Maru sacrificed his Reaper, and he saw a Roach Warren. So he immediately started a Marauder, and he's also getting a bunker up as well. Marauder is a very necessary unit if you spot a Roach Warren. Whether the Zerg makes a Roach or not, you need at least one Marauder. I believe Maru gets a second Marauder, and that's being pretty safe as well. But it's alright, because Marauders do play a good role in helping build up the tankiness in your bio army. And notice how, like, he still hasn't finished his wall off yet. It's very important to take note of exactly what you need to complete a wall and the most efficient number of buildings to use. So on this like big ramp, I guess it's not so big after all the wall off. You need 1 depot, 2 depot, 3 depot, 4 depot, and 1 bunker. Or you could probably use less depots and put your engineering bays over here, but I don't know how exactly they would line up. But you definitely use a lot less depots if you build the engineering base there. So already, it's a pretty good wall off area because you only need 4 depots and a bunker. On some smaller maps like Frost, you might only need, on Frost you only need you only need 3 depots and 1 bunker. On Yansu, I think it's 4 depots and 1 bunker. On Polar Knight, you can do it with 3 depots and 1 bunker. And on Habitation Station, you can do it with 3 depots and 1 bunker. So it plays a small role in like the earliest you can wall off, and it's kind of interesting to just take note, but it's not really a game changer at all. It's just one of those small pieces of information that you may or may not use to your advantage. Mario's getting a second bunker because he has seen a bunch of roaches, but he doesn't know how all-in Sulky is being with it. So once again, this is a safety measure. He's kind of forced into it because of the roaches. These roaches provide excellent map control for Sulky. It instantly shuts down any Hellion harass, and it allows Sulky to get a bunch of drones up without having to commit too heavily to Zerglings. And as we can see here, Sulky is intelligently using these roaches to break down the destructible rocks, and there's nothing Maru can do about it right now. If he was doing a 3 base all-in or like a really aggressive build, opening this area up would be fantastic, because as we discussed, or as we saw earlier, it is a shorter rush distance to the between the naturals if you go through the rocks area. Alright, just making sure it's recording. I don't want it to crash. So breaking down these rocks is forcing Maru to wall off as fast as possible. Notice how he has a lot more supply available than he does filled up, and that's because he wants to try to wall off this area to the rocks as fast as possible. So that's one thing that the roaches do, in addition to having map control and allowing your creep tumors to spread pretty freely. So already Sulky is doing a great job playing the map, and let's see, where's Zerglings? I know a Zergling attack. Okay, so now he's making a bunch of Zerglings. He's delaying his 4th base in favor of making a bunch of Zerglings. There we go. So he has all those Zerglings, and he's actually going to be aggressive after breaking down the rocks, which is pretty cool to see. So Sulky has a very intelligent game plan where he makes 6 roaches, and he not only is he able to fake an all-in, a very fast roach baneling bust on 3 bases, he's able to break down these rocks and utilizes the broken rocks and the faster rush distance by making a bunch of lings, and he's going to do a counterattack, and it has a good chance, and it does, catch Maru off guard. So we see the units coming, and we see he's also doing a counterattack into the third base, so not only is Sulky utilizing the map or the map mechanics, he's also taking it a step farther and doing a two-pronged attack to split Mara's units up. Like, imagine if his Hellions were at his natural with the rest of his Bioforce instead of over here at the third, keeping it safe, then Mara would have a much easier time cleaning up all of these Lings and Roaches, because 6 Hellions, frankly, along with Bio, will kill a large amount of Marines. And that would give Maru a much easier state of mind to clear this force up. Unfortunately, Maru leaves the depot open, but even if he didn't, the Roaches would still be able to break a hole in the wall, and Maru or Sulky would still be able to get in and at least force a stim out of Maru. But this is the best case scenario for Maru, and as we see here, the supply is relatively even. Sulky has slightly more because he did make Roaches, and Roaches fill up your supply super fast. And basically what Sulky is doing here is he's the one taking the aggression, and instead of Maru going out with his first 2 medevacs, and what we usually see is either like clear the watchtowers and scan and kill some creep to clear an attack path towards the 4th base location, we see Sulky taking the initiative and building a bunch of units to shut down this stage of aggression when Maru's 1-1 finishes and when he wants to start getting out on the map, and Sulky just shuts it down with an attack of his own that hits slightly earlier than Maru's ready for. And once again, he builds those Lings, or he sends those Lings to the 3rd base, which pulls away all the Hellions, so there's no Hellions over here as well. So it's just very good play by Sulky. And Maru actually, like, he's doing a good job clearing all of this up. As we can see, as soon as the Hellion comes, almost all of the Lings die pretty instantly. And this is cleaned up with ease. Maru ends up being ahead in supply because Sulky just used a large portion of his army to get that job done. And Sulky's 4th base hasn't started yet either. So Maru's on 3 base, full saturation, and Sulky hasn't even started his 4th. Now it's going down. So that was a kind of an aggressive attack by Sulky, and he needed to do, I think, more damage than it actually did. Yeah, the drone count's even with the SCVs, and there's 4 mules, so Maru definitely has a large lead. He also saved all of his Hellions. His medevac count is up to 4, and Sulky has no army on the ground anymore. So Maru's definitely in a good advantage because of that attack and how Maru was able to deal with it and clean it up with minimal losses. As we see here, he's walling off this area. It's always important to wall off sections with supply depots in this matchup because it makes run-bys like what Sulky did with the Roach Ling attack much harder to accomplish, because he'd have to run through here, through Maru's reinforcement line. So Maru, I believe he took that watchtower. Let's take a look at that army movement. Alright, so the army's here. He takes the watchtower over here. Then he's going to move over to this side. Does he check for the 4th base here? Yeah, he checks for the 4th base here. There's no 4th base. So he knows that the 4th base is going to be over here. And this is the normal attack path. Let's go into the game. Alright, so his army moved out from here and it went this way. Remember, Maru has the supply depot wall over here. But his army moved out here, it went here, it went here, it went here, went here, cleared out the watchtower, then it poked the 4th base, and it saw no 4th base, so now the army's going this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, and now it's going to attack over here because he knows Sulky's 4th base is over there. Alright, cool. So, Now the typical TvZ phase starts where you want to be trying to do as much damage as possible to Sulky's or to the Zerg's 4th base, and if you can take it out during this stage, it'll prevent the Zerg from teching to Ultralisks, because you need at least 4 bases to tech to Hive. Maru scanning for creep, doing all the typical standard Terran moves that you might do in this situation. And he's kind of caught out of position. Sulky has an excellent flank here, and it forces Maru to pick up. So although Sulky's attack didn't do that much damage, he's still by no means out of this game yet, because as we saw, it takes such a long time for Maru to reach the 4th base of Sulky. He had to go this long way, and even stop by the watchtower, but he had to go this long way, and then he checked for the 4th base here, which wouldn't be that great because it's a really close rush distance, so Sulky takes it over here. So he goes this way, and then he gets to the 4th base, and it gives Sulky enough time to drone up and to create an extra production round of units to stay alive against Maru's aggression. Maru's still in an excellent position. He's by no means given up his lead because he lost minimal amounts of units. This is the beginning of the Hellbat style, just gotta remember that. So his factory could have been about a minute earlier, but Sulky's attack probably threw Maru off guard and also messed up his macro ever so slightly, like his rhythm. So this factory is kind of late. He's not gonna... excuse me. He's not gonna have Blue Flame Hellions for a very long time, at least another... It takes 60 seconds for a factory to build, another 25, and another almost 2 minutes for Blue Flame to actually research. So he's not going to have it till at least 17 minutes into the game, and he's going to be on Hellbats. So it's kind of a mistake by Maru not to have it earlier. I mean, imagine what Blue Flame Hellions would have done to Zerglings in this kind of a situation. Like, these Zerglings would have died so much faster, but all the Hellbat's usefulness right now is to tank damage rather than both tank and deal damage because of the lack of the Blue Flame Hellion upgrade. And this is kind of a mistake by Maru pushing out here. We know he's off of creep, so that's good for him. And as a result, he's able to trade most of his bio army away. And yeah, most of his bio army away for Sulky's Banelings, which is always a good trade, because if he didn't do that, then Sulky would just tech straight up to Hive, because he wouldn't have to spend all of his gas to remake Banelings. And the supplies is still kind of even, but Maru just still doesn't have the Blue Flame upgrade, so, and he didn't have any Thors as well, and he wasn't maxed out. So it wasn't the ideal spot to fight, but he still ended up trading relatively well. But now he's going out again, and this is kind of not a good idea. First of all, he's going on creep. He's taking the watchtower though, and I think having the watchtower is really important to taking a good fight. So if we take a look at the map, yeah, Protoss, he's just sad that Widow Mines got buffed. So this is the area where Maru's attack is happening, and Maru just took the watchtower, so it would give him vision about up to here-ish. Now, if Maru has the watchtower, he has this entire choke covered, so it gives him a couple possibilities. He can like abuse this high ground with medevacs, and he can have his main army positioned up here, and then since he has vision of the watchtower, he can see any units that come into this little strait over here, and then he can just put medevacs down here and abuse the high ground to low ground position and slowly chip away at the Zerg's extractors and drone count because of the proximity of the 4th base. And as if that's not good enough, he can simply walk his army over here and camp right outside of the Zerg's 4th base and prevent all mining. Although that is a bit riskier because there is a ramp up here and it's a lot closer to the Zerg's reinforcement point line rather than here. It's a lot farther away. This map is just really big, so even though these two positions are like on the same hemisphere of the map, they're really, really far away. Alright, so Maru unfortunately chooses just to go straight down the middle, like the brave Terran he is, and fortunately that doesn't work out too well for him. He trades alright, but he doesn't have the big enough army to deal with all of these units. And as a result, his entire army gets cleaned up because he fought on creep, and because he still doesn't have the Blue Flame Hellion upgrade, unfortunately, either. So he's not performing at the best macro level as possible. One thing we see, Maru's starting to use the broken rocks to his advantage and to use it to reinforce this army so that he can attack Sulky's 4th base quicker. That Thor lost its pathing, but in general, like after the rocks are down, you can just rally your units over here or over here and then reinforce them. So it kind of helps him by breaking down the rocks and having them broken down, and it gets covered as a counterattack path as well because Maru's army and his reinforcements are both going to be in the road or area or strait. I'm just going to call it a strait because I like that word. And he does a good job of zoning out the Mutalisks. It's very important that he did this because if he didn't, the Mutalisks would have an absolute field day in the Terran base. When I was looking for games the other day, I chanced upon Marine King Prime versus Roro, and Roro absolutely tore poor Marine King Prime apart by abusing this dead airspace and being able to zip in, deal damage with Mutalisks, and then get out safely. So by preventing the Mutalisks from getting into the main base, it's very, very important. And Sulky knows that like it's okay for him to lose a couple Mutalisks. He's gonna do a bunch of damage in here no matter what, as long as he gets in. And he's a guaranteed safe path to retreat from as well. And instead, he ends up bouncing around the bases, which is also not bad because of the size of the map. And he's still not trapped even. He can just go around the outskirts of the map. If we take a look in-game, so his Mutalisks are over here. They can just fly like over here, and they'll be safe. And they can go here. Just completely safe. So it's a pretty interesting map. There's a lot of ways both players can abuse it very easily. And now, since Maru traded his army several times with Sulky's, he has allowed Sulky to tech into Hive because Sulky knows that Maru's army isn't going to be an immediate threat. Oh, and these Mutalisks they're so annoying. There's nothing Maru can do there except leave units, unfortunately. And that's not good because then they're isolated from the rest of the army. Maru taking this 4th base. So instead of taking this 4th base, he takes this 4th base, and I think he does this because it allows him to do a counterattack there or counterattack, or not over there. Alright, it allows him to do attacks there and also there. So to either one of Sulky's possible 5th bases. Whereas this 4th base would be a lot more defensive and almost impossible to reach over here. But it would still be defended. So it would force it into a much longer late game, which we do not want to play against the Zerg's Hive. No, Flash. No. Flash player just crashed. Oh my god. This is so embarrassing. Okay, I'll just leave it on 720p. Hopefully that won't make it crash. At least it saved my spot. Alright. It kinda did. Alright. It's not too far behind. So, Maru's 4th base over there. He's taken it. This game, it's shaping up to be a pretty decent game. Maru, he's going to soon be on 4 bases. And Sulky, he's going to be looking to establish a 5th base relatively soon so that he can have continued support for his Hive Tech, which he is getting, by the way. He got an infestation pit a couple minutes earlier, and I believe Hive has finished up. It should have. I would be very surprised if it didn't. Alright, so Sulky decides to take the 5th base over here, and that's a pretty safe area because he has a lot of creep spread there, and he has a high ground positioning, so it's not the worst by his part, but at the same time, it gives Maru a great chance to go this way and, excuse me, be able to kind of do a slow parade push towards Soki's 5th base. Now Maru, he's doing a drop, the trademark, like all top Korean players, they push with their main army at one spot, and then they drop with just one medevac worth of units at a completely different spot to bring units out of position so that the main army can do a better job at winning the engagement. And if Soki doesn't move any of his army, he's going to start losing stuff. And if he moves some of his army, he's going to have less units over here in general. So it's a win-win situation, and it's what all top level player Terrans do. Fantasy is a very notable example. He always makes sure to have constant drops like that to pull you out of position. And unfortunately over here, Maru he lost a big portion of his army when when like these two different parts of the army weren't even caught in position, and I guess he was being kind of like his multitasking was being pressured by Sulky's counterattacks. It's one of the trademarks of a good Zerg is always to counterattack when the main army is out of position. So it's very difficult to be aware of that, and like it forces the reinforcement line over here to the 3rd base rather than with the army. And as a result of that, losing his 3rd base, a lot of stuff at his 3rd base, SCVs and units, and losing a significant portion of his main army, Maru is now down in supply, and he's not going to be... He did at least deny the 5th base, but he did only... he did lose a portion of his army, so it wasn't a completely free swipe away at the 5th base. And he keeps dropping, which is very nice of him, but Sulky isn't bringing any of his units out of position to deal with it because he knows that that's what Maru wants to do, and instead of sending the Mutalisks to deal with this drop like a normal player would, because if you send Zerglings and Banelings, then the drop's just going to pick up and fly away and laugh at your face. So instead of sending the Mutalisks to deal with this, Sulky instead goes once again into the main base of Maru because he knows that it's such an important area to attack, and it's such an easy area to attack as well. He got that reactor on the starport, which is huge. He either has to stop medevac production, and Maru's been dropping a lot too, so his medevac count's starting to get a bit low. How's he still able to build 2 medevacs though? That's interesting. But this Mutalisk harass, I think mutas are going to be very good on this map because they can bounce in between bases. Maru is like having a very difficult time at dealing with this. His drop is doing equal amounts of damage, but those Mutalisks were able to bounce from the main to the natural to the 4th to the 3rd for a little bit, but then swinging back, and now it's going into the main. So they're going to be able to have a pretty good time on this map regardless of what the Terran player is doing, unless the Terran player is doing Mech, which we will be taking a look at how Mech works out in the next game. But for now, we're just focusing on this game, and again, Maru has his entire half of his army out of position. However, this time, if we take a look over here, it's not so bad because right now he does it on purpose this time, and he was trying to do it on purpose last time. He just missed the timing by a little bit. But what he's essentially trying to do is pre-split his units so that Sulky attacks his whole army into a portion of Maru's army, and then Maru's reinforcements can kind of like stem from behind and support his army. And that's kind of like what we see here. We see a portion of the army here, and Sulky very smartly only uses a portion of his army to engage it. And then Maru ends up getting... I don't even know what to say anymore. It's just... there's so many things going on in this game. So Maru, his army is nowhere near Sulky's army, so he shouldn't be out on the map at all. He should be playing very defensively, taking a 5th base and trying not to have any more damage dealt to him by the Mutalisks. And if we see the Mutalisks here, they're not even in the fight. They're just doing harassment. And unfortunate that Thor was picked off, but more unfortunate is a couple SCVs. Fortunately, though, Maru's army is close enough to the 4th base so that he is going to be able to defend that 4th base relatively easily. And he does this drop, which is nice because he knew Sulky's Mutalisks were out of position harassing his 4th base, so he's going to be... I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to get out here relatively okay. Or not. He's going to... Okay, he's going to lose all of his units in a medvac. This trade is always worth it for Zerg, sending in Banelings to kill a 4th base by the Terran players, so you really have to be aware of that. Maybe make a sensor tower here for Maru so that this doesn't happen, because you can't like lift up your planetary or anything. It's in a set position, and it's perfectly fine for Sulky to lose that many Banelings because he is going to be on 5 bases very soon, and he has an economy to replenish his units, whereas Maru, he's going to be mined out of his main relatively soon and his natural, so he's only going to be on 2 base economy pretty soon. So back to the game. Now Maru's in kind of a bad position. He didn't deal with the Mutalisks as well as he should have if he wanted to maintain a strong position in this game. However, I don't really think there was a better way he could have dealt with it. Maybe have sensor towers in better locations to catch the Mutalisks flying in advance, so that he can stim his army and to intercept the Mutas before they actually get into the main and do damage, or at the 4th. These Mutalisks have really just done a huge amount of damage just by being able to fly in uncontested and do damage and then fly out, and Sulky doing that multiple times. I think he's done that 4 times this game already, and just chipping away at Maru really shows the difference in supply. And now Maru's making siege tanks, which is very, very questionable. Sulky has like 20 Mutalisks out on the map, so at this point I think Maru is just very desperate and he doesn't know what to do in this game. I mean, I think he's getting the siege tanks for the Ultralisks and Banelings, and he's trying to play defensively like right now, but those Mutalisks are always going to guarantee that the Zerg player ends up winning the battle, because the Ultralisks tank up enough damage to kill the Marines, and then the Mutalisks can deal damage as well. But Maru is able to push this back only because, and proving me wrong, only because Sulky overextends here. So he's overextending. He has a bunch of units though. The army supply, I would say it's in Maru's favor in terms of like what army is here. And his Banelings just all go into the siege tanks, which is very unfortunate because you really need the Ultralisks and you need Banelings left over to deal with all of these Marines. And once the Marines are dealt with, then you can just come in with the Mutalisks and do game-ending damage, because there won't be enough Marines to deal with the Mutalisks. But Maru does a good job holding that off. Sulky did overextend that. So I guess the siege tanks aren't the worst idea. I guess Maru realizes he has to play very defensively, and like once again those Mutalisks just doing free amounts of damage and then saying peace, yo, I'm out, and he leaves for free. He doesn't even pay his tab, he just gets away with getting drinks for free. Maru, he's doing a very big drop over here, so it kind of works both ways. If the Mutalisks are on the Terran side of the map dealing damage, that means Maru is free to harass with drops on Sulky's side of the map and also do equal amounts of damage, and being able to run away, kind of do guerrilla tactic warfare. He was able to pick off that hatchery, a very good trade. Unfortunately, these Mutalisks are going to catch these units and clean them up. Mutalisks are really, really strong and really, really fast as well, unfortunately, for Maru. And Maru hasn't done anything to deal with Sulky's creep spread. He did one scan at the 5th base to slow it down, but other than that, Sulky's had an uncontested time spreading this creep, and as a result, Sulky, he's starting to be aggressive with his creep spread. That's one of the options that a good creep spread gives a Zerg player is counterattacks like we see into the natural. And if we remember, this is the shorter rush distance, so these counterattacks are even more effective because it's a lot harder for Maru to defend this area. And I don't really like Maru's expansion pattern. I think if he expanded to this fourth base, he'd have a much easier time at defending his map because doing counterattacks to the third base would be a lot harder because of how far the third base is away from everything else. And having your fourth base over here also means that this army would also be over here, and it would give the Mutalisks a harder time to harass into the main and the natural and then fly away uncontested. And then just like bounce back and forth between the natural and the fourth. Like these Mutalisks just so much damage. I can't like say that enough. There's just so much damage. Maru's doing a pretty cute job of sending those three. Oh, just 2 Thors. I thought he had 3. But those Thors end up flushing the Mutalisks away for now. But it is a band-aid option. Maru's floated his third base over to his fifth because as a Terran player, you need to have 2 bases economically solid in order to play against the Zerg on 5 gases. Otherwise, you're not going to have enough of an army to, or enough of a production to make an army to kill this hive army cost effective, or not even cost effectively. You can't engage this, you can't attack this cost effectively. You can only take better engagements and kind of use the mules to out econ the Zerg player and slowly shut the Zerg player down by trading away all his units and getting rid of his bank and his resources. And Maru, like, he's just, Sulky has hit this counterattack spot so many times this game. I'm not even going to go back. I'm just going to add it up in my head. So he attacked it with the roaches and the lings, first of all. And he broke down the rocks with the roaches. And we obviously see this paying dividends for Sulky. Bunch of dollars coming in for him. Because, like, these counterattacks and then the Mutalisks harass over here on this side of the map has just really brought Maru's economy to a grinding halt. So he did this. He did an ultra attack. He did the Roachling. He did at least 1 ultra attack. When he attacked here, he also split off some units to go there. And then he did another. He was going to do another counterattack here, but Maru did a triple drop at Sulky's 4th base. And now he's doing another attack here with just pure lings. Can be completely disposed of. And oh my god, that's awful. That's really awful. And the reason why that's able to happen is because of Maru's expansion pattern, which is making his units get out of position, and the way that the map is built. But it's more that Maru isn't doing a great job of adapting to this map. And as we can see, this final battle, Maru has like a sizable army, but since the Zerg has a hive tech army, he can really trade really cost efficiently. And Sulky has just completely annihilated Maru based on the fact that Maru's expansion pattern wasn't the best suited to his army movements, and as soon as Maru had to be defensive after losing some key engagements that lost him any map control and any pressure that he could do with his large army, Sulky immediately started to go on the aggressive by using both Mutalisks and a large number of counterattacks to outposition Maru's Bioforce. Pretty interesting game. I'm just trying to think. Did I go over everything? I think I went over everything. To be fair, for Maru, this was played January 20th, a very long time ago. So I think this was like when the map came out. So it must have been like a month old or less. So it hasn't been completely explored out. The next game we're going to take a look at, though, is Flash versus Dongray Gu on the same map. It's played on January 19th, the same day. Flash, fortunately, has a much better preparation than Maru does because he's Flash and that's what he does. So, I mean, I'm not trying to diss Maru or anything. It's just one of Flash's strengths to prepare for a matchup, a player, and the map. So in this game, Flash is going to be playing a mech game versus Dongre-gu, and what we will see here is Flash doing a, like, similar to what Sulky did. Flash is going to do the same thing and utilize the different map mechanics that the map makers have given this map in order to play a very aggressive style of mech. So, going into the game. Ooh, it's snowing. Dongre-gu, he almost always does a drone scout on 2-player maps because he doesn't want to lose to a proxy 2-racks. Actually, if you do scout with a drone and you see there's no proxy 2-racks, it basically shuts down any 2-racks aggression that you would do if you were doing a proxy 2-racks, and it forces the Terran player to transition out of it into a slight, not a slight lead, a slight disadvantage, I guess. So that's what the drone scout does. It pays off. Like, it hurts your economy a little bit, but for the amount of information that is gained and the versatility that it can bring to your decision making based off of the information that it sees, it is, in Dongre-gu's mind, totally worth it. And as we can see here, Flash also opting to do a Reaper expand, primarily because it is a 2-player map. So since both players know immediately where they are, Dongre-gu's pink mouse, it's pretty cute. Since Flash knows exactly where Dongre-gu is and vice versa, it's very important to Reaper expand just to be safe. However, Flash does do a slightly better opening than Maru because this map is really big. He's doing it like if it was a map on Yansu where the rush distance were much smaller. He probably would have made a depot first because a 6 pool would be able to get into your base before the second depot goes down. And the drone scout, it can be used to block the depot from going down as well on a smaller map like Yansu, and then you can bring like all your drones and zerglings and try to kill the barracks before the Reaper pops out, but that's for a different day. What Flash is doing, he's added his his natural CC before he started another another depot. So he's just getting that CC out ever so slightly quicker. It's slightly more optimized than what Maru's build was doing right off the bat, but still exactly the same. He's just getting the command center over the depot rather than getting the depot over the command center, which is the overly safe way to play it. Oh, actually, not completely identical. It looks like Flash is actually going to be doing a single Reaper build. This gets the factory and the reactor out a lot. No, screw that. No, Flash is. I'm pretty sure I know what he's doing. He makes the reactor really fast, and then he's gonna make 1 Reaper, and then he makes the factory. So by the time the Reaper's done, then he can just switch the factory over. Oh, and prove me wrong and make 2 Marines. So on this map, the 2 Marines are always used to deny overlords, but on this map, there are a lot of locations in which overlords can fly in because of all that dead airspace at the back of the main base and then little positions at the natural. So Dongre-gu is going to be guaranteed seeing his gas count, and he's probably going to have a pretty easy time getting into the main base. I think these 2 Marines are for if this Overlord at the natural chose to go over here so that Dongre-gu could get a full scout off of Flash's base, then these 2 Marines would be able to intercept the Overlord and kill it and also deny scouting information. Because this base is relatively large, oh my gosh, you can jump up and down with the Reapers on this side. That is crazy. It doesn't even look like they can do that. But yeah, it's very interesting to note. A long jump for a Reaper. The jetpacks are pretty good items, I guess. Alright, so back to these 2 Marines. Basically, this base area in the main base, it's a pretty big base, so if you want to get 100% scout off, you either have to get Overlord speed, or you have to send the second Overlord over here, and Flash making those 2 Marines prevents the second Overlord from being able to be used to scout the main base, and Flash is building his tech over here, kind of in the area last where it would be scouted. Like Dongre-gu's Overlord is here, it would fly in. It would have a much harder time scouting it here than if it was closer to this area over here. So very small key things that Flash is doing, and immediately the openers start to get different. Flash is doing a Hellion Banshee build because he is in fact going for Mech. Kind of interesting to see Dongregu breaking down the rocks for himself. In the previous game, we saw Sulky break down the rocks to be aggressive against Maru, and in this game, we see Dongregu breaking down these rocks, most likely because he wants to take an expansion over here. So, already, like, two similar games, but just there's a lot more decisions and different things that you are able to do because of the destructible rocks, because of the way the map is laid out. So I'm really, really happy with Blizzard for including a map like this into their new ladder season. I think the maps were getting a bit stale, and this should spice up the gameplay as well. Alright, so Dongregu actually is just taking the third base over there. I think it's for his fourth base. We'll just have to see what he's going to use that for, but it is interesting that he's breaking down his own rocks relatively early. And Flash, he's scouting at 6 minutes and 50 seconds to check if there is like a second gas, if there is going to be a Baneling Nest or Roach Worm going down, because he did scout the fast gas earlier on with his Reaper. So this is just another check to see if he's doing if Dongregu going to be doing an all-in or not. And fortunately for Dongregu, Flash doesn't see anything, but he does only see one gas, and based on the fact that he can see how much was mined on the gas, he doesn't necessarily have to do much reaction to it. Really, all that Flash wanted to do was to check to see if there was a fast layer starting, because 650 is about the time that a very fast layer starts. A very, very, very fast layer that starts before speed starts at like 5.5 to 6 minutes even. It's just extremely fast. So this would be about the time when a layer started, right after the first 100 minerals were mined, or 100 gas was mined for speed. So as we can see, oh, his scout's already dead, but this is when, like, oh my god. Alright, so he's going to be scouting relatively soon. Dongregu now has another 100 gas. This would be exactly the time when he makes a layer. Like, he would if he was planning on doing a layer build, a very fast layer build, he would be making the layer immediately right now. So what this Reaper is doing is it's scouting for not only any all-ins, but also for a fast layer being built. It's a lot harder to scout for all-ins because the Reaper can't cover the entire position, but it is a lot better chance to scout that you don't see a layer building here, you didn't see a layer in the main, so you know that there's no layer going on, even though you didn't scout the additional gases potentially being added. So that information gives Flash all he needs to know to be able to take that third base on the low ground. He is also doing a Hellion Banshee build, which is 100% safe against any openers that the Zerg can do. The only kind of like soft to hardish counter against Hellion Banshee is doing a fast layer build into Mutalisks, because you're denying your anti-air for such a long time to get the Cloak Banshees out and the Hellion count. So, just looking at this mini map, unfortunately, Flash loses a bit of mining time. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world, because it would take a long time to float the base from the main or the natural to this third base location. So taking the third base here is still worth it, even though he lost like some building time even. It's not that important. And we can see Flash, he's getting 2 armories, he's got Cloak, he's doing a little bit of harass. He's once again scouting with the Banshee. He hasn't seen a layer thus far, so he's not going to have to build an extremely fast engineering bay. And now he's just going to be transitioning into a fairly standard mech game. So the basic outline of Flash's build is to get Hellion Banshee, a fast third command center, and then add on 2 armories, and then 2 more factories, and then probably another 2 additional factories. And end up taking a 4th base as well. So weird how Dongregu hasn't broken down the rocks yet. He's just worked on them a lot, because I think it's to be able to have the option to take this base faster, because if the rocks are not down, then this base is pretty much unobtainable for the Zerg player. So it breaking down the rocks not only adds new attack paths, but it adds new possible expansion patterns, which is really cool to see. And Flash, he's only using the Cloak Banshees to scout. He's keeping the Hellions at home because he knows that he's playing extremely greedy. He doesn't need to do any damage with the Hellions. He also doesn't need to deny creep spread so much. It's not that much of a priority because he is going Mech, and with Mech, creep spread is not nearly as important as it is in controlling the map than with Bio. In Flash, one of the notable things he's doing with his Mech build is that he's building Vikings now to clear overlords, but he's also built a reactor on his barracks, and now he's going to be building X2 Viking production, which gives him a lot better map control of this dead airspace. So immediately all of the problems that we saw happen to Maru with all the Mutalisks going bio is going to be eliminated by the fact that Flash will have a decent Viking count to be able to defend against the Mutalisk harass, and he's going to be going Mech as well, so he's going to have a lot more units positioned defensively so that he can establish bases and get that economy going to produce a bunch of scary Mech units. So I think Dongregu scouted all of that information with his fast Overseer. So he's getting Overlord speed, he's getting +1 Roach range, he's getting the Roach Warren, and he's getting the Carapace. So pretty sure he knows that Flash is going for Mech now. So there's not really going to be any surprises from either player in what they're doing for the next couple of minutes. We're going to be seeing a straight up macro game from both of them. They're just rushing into macroing ASAP. Pretty cool to see. And Flash, he's still being very defensive. Since he took his third base really fast at like, I just want to make a point. That's why I'm doing this. Alright, so he took a very fast third base at the third base location at about 7-ish minutes. Oh my god. Alright, so he took it at 17 minutes and 17 seconds. It's not as fast as a super fast third command center would be because of the Hellion Banshee tech or the Banshee tech being researched beforehand, but this is still a very greedy third base. And then we see Flash at 12 minutes, he's going to be taking his fourth base. So, like, it takes 100 seconds for the command center to build. So, by starting it now, minus or plus 2 minutes, 13:54 minus 20 seconds, 13:34. His fourth base is going to be done by 13 minutes and 34 seconds, and all he has to do is float it over to this fourth base location, which is handily very, very close to the third base and the natural. So he's going to have a fourth base mining before like the 15-minute mark, which is very, very good for a Mech player. Like, the one thing that Zerg wants to do against a Mech player is to shut down the Terran's economy and to deny bases, and it's to definitely not want to have the Terran player on 4 bases uncontested and building a big deathball army that the Zerg can't beat. So Dongregu, his reaction to Mech is to get some Mutalisks out to force harass or force defense, and then to get Roaches out and then go into swarm hosts. That's a very solid reaction by him. And once again, this was played on January 19th. It's now like it's been almost 2 months. It's been a little bit more than 2 months since Mech has become used more and more. So it has been a bit discovered, like a bit more planned out, doing Mech versus Zerg for Zerg players. But we see here the basics of a strong anti-Mech play already. Getting first Mutalisks, then getting Roaches, and then getting Swarm Hosts. Just doing a bunch of tech switches. And Flash, these Mutalisks are forcing him to build turrets. I guess turrets just over there, because if the Mutalisks go too far into the main, there's already 2 sensor towers added, and this is in preparation for Flash to take his fourth base, because he's going to be a bit more spread out with his units. So already, only the 2 turrets would be necessary to keep the siege tank alive, which is keeping the rocks alive. Because if the rocks die, then it becomes a lot harder for Flash to defend his natural. So he is keeping his rocks alive on purpose, whereas Dongrygu has broken his so that he can establish a 5th base over here. And we saw Seolki establish a 5th base over here. And just these different expansion patterns by both of these players, or different like game plans based on the rocks, which dictates the expansion patterns, is just very cool to see. Just all the different versatility coming out just from changing the maps, and like having a very unique map added into the map pool is just going to be very cool to see all the new strategies pop out. And so one thing I just want to point out is that this map, although it is a very good Mutalisk map, and Seolki showed that by tearing apart Maru, and I just watched a game the other day where Roro did the same thing to Marine King Prime. He basically kept using Mutalisks, and Marine King was brought to his knees as a result of the continued Mutalisk harass. He probably had to take an aspirin afterwards because it was giving him a headache. But Flash, his game plan to do a mech build and to play a very greedy mech build as well, but safe at the same time based on what he scouts, allows no possibility for Mutalisks to be used on this map, because he has a decent Viking count and he has both sensor towers covering the dead airspace over here, and any possible counterattacks that could attack the rocks and open up an area to go into Flash's main, and the sensor tower at the 3rd to look for any Mutalisk trying to zip into the 3rd into the main. So Flash has shut down any chance of Mutalisk harass at all. Now, one of the interesting things that Flash is going to do that specifically can't be done on any other map except this map is to utilize siege tanks and the high ground location of Sejong Station. So, oops. Let me just switch into the game. So one thing I'm going to point out, and it looks much clearer on the big screen, is that if you get siege tanks over here, or like even, no, I think it's just over here, like you can break down these rocks, and then you can just send in siege tanks all the way over here, and then over here to this base, and deny it, essentially, and to do the exact same thing over here. You wouldn't go this way because the rocks aren't broken, but from the 4th base you can go all the way over here, and then over here, and then over here, and then deny this base as well. So these 2 outer bases on the map, I'll go over it with my mouse. This base over here and this base over here, Flash is going to have a very, not easy time, but he's going to have an option to deny those bases with siege tanks on the high ground. And that's what we're going to see here. That's why he keeps making siege tanks, Vikings, and Hellbats. Notice how it's 15 minutes into the game and Flash has taken his 4th base already, but he's not transitioning into heavy air such as battle cruisers and Ravens. He's staying specifically on a lot of mech and also getting a large Viking count as well. So that's like a very specific thing that Flash is doing. He's moving out now. I think it's just to clear some creep. I don't expect him to really... Actually, he has a pretty big unit force. Alright, so Seolki's swarm hosts are out, and when swarm hosts are out, there's not going to be any way that this natural area can be defended anymore, because the rocks are going to be busted down by the locusts. Locusts have huge DPS against the siege tanks. So it's going to be an area to defend later on. Although Flash has already secured this half of the map, even has a sensor tower at his 4th base. Like these sensor towers are just doing an amazing job at giving him map control and where his army should be. And Flash, he's feeling very ballsy and is going to be... I'm pretty sure he gets the deny here. It's been kind of a while since I've watched this game, but it's... Does he? No, he doesn't. So he just cleared creep, then he got out of there. So he wasn't able to kill that base, but because of how far away these 2 bases are, like this base over here and this base over here, so Dongray's 5+ gas is going to come from either one of those bases. The swarm hosts can't defend each area at the same time. Like, swarm hosts are all on this area of the map, and if they were to try to come over here to defend this location, they'd have to go all the way around the safe way, through the natural, up to this base, through the creep, or go off creep and risk being overtaken by Flash's watchtower and just killed by being out of position. So Flash, he postures over here with his army. He hasn't sieged up any of his tanks yet, and he still has, his Viking fleet is able to spot the swarm host moving here. And Dongrigu, he knows he doesn't have enough time for the swarm host to come this way, but he does want to try to cut this army off of Flash, so he's going on the low ground over here. Like, his swarm hosts are over here. They have to be burrowed to let the locusts out. Then he's going to unburrow and chase these siege tanks. It's kind of like the slowest cop car chase you'll ever see, with swarm hosts, siege tanks, Thors, and Hellbats in motion. So now he's moving his swarm hosts. This also gives Dongrigu a great advantage by being able to take out this fourth base, because his locusts are now in position to do so. So Flash is forced, so Dongrigu has cut off Flash already, so Flash is forced now to keep pressing forward and try to keep the swarm hosts away as long as possible from this fourth base, while Flash starts to slowly transition into some heavier air. As we see here, this army, it's unfortunately going to get cleaned up. It is cornered, and there's nothing else Flash can do other than siege up and try to take the best engagement as possible. But it did buy him enough time to move some units, as we see on the mini-map, to the fourth base location to reinforce it. There we go. So this fourth base is going to be safe from Dongrigu's swarm hosts, which are now coming to the fourth base, and they're going to attack it. So it gave Flash enough time to position his units to protect the fourth base like that. Although he's going to lose the sensor turret and the sensor tower and the missile turret because of that. But he was able to deny this base over here from going up. So he's limiting Dongrigu to 5 bases, whereas Flash has already established a 5th base as a mech player before 18 minutes. Before 18 minutes, he has a planetary fortress 99% done, so the planetary fortress is essentially done. He's on 5 bases, and Dongrigu is only on 5 bases. So right now, this game is heavily leaning towards Flash's favor because of his economic status in this game, basically. Now these swarm hosts, they're like I said earlier, they busted down the rocks over here, and now they're going to be used to do some harassment between the natural and the fourth base. They can easily bounce around between the two by simply rallying the locusts in a different way. And we see that here. And Dongrigu has a ton of swarm hosts, actually. I don't think he has any more mutalisks left, even. So if you have like 20 swarm hosts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So that's 19 times 3. He has 57 supply worth of swarm hosts. He probably has another 60 to 70 in drones, and then he's making 8 infestors, and he has a bunch of roaches over here doing some harassment. So that's essentially all of his army, or at least a third of his army in swarm hosts. Actually, more like half of his army in swarm hosts and the other half in infestors and roaches. And these roaches doing a nice little job of being really annoying. But it's not really going to be the biggest deal. Now Flash is forced to move all of his siege tanks because Dongrigu does have all of his locusts over here. So if he didn't move all of his siege tanks, then he would lose his natural and then lose control to his main base and his rally point as well. So it's very important to have the siege tanks in position to be able to deal with the swarm hosts. And now Dongrigu, he's moving away. This Banshee, very luckily doing damage. Zerg players nowadays, they almost always build spores at their main or at these extension bases so that Banshees don't snipe off their bases, because that's really bad if it happens. So don't expect that to really be a very common sight in your latter games. And here we see these locusts doing a great job by Dongrigu of just swinging around and being able to harass the fourth base, and that's forcing Flash to, as you can see on the minimap, all of his tanks that were at the natural are now being sent to the 4th base area to defend this 4th base. And then now Dongregyu, he's just gonna, he has the option of going back to the natural and then back to the 4th base as many times as he wants. And he's gone up to a total of 21 swarm hosts, which is a ridiculous amount. But the good thing going in Flash's favor is that Dongregyu has not established this important base that Flash denied, and this base does not have gas yet either. So Dongregyu is essentially on 4 gases, or 4 base gas, whereas Flash has taken 5 bases already. So the Terran Mech player is up a base against the Zerg player, which is a really, really good position. Like, the Zerg player needs to be as cost efficient as possible, because the Terran Mech army is so cost efficient, and having more economy is just, it spells doom for Dongregyu. So as we can see, these locusts, they're just switching around. Alright, now here comes the cool part by Flash. So he did make those 2 starports earlier on. He has a total of, I believe, 3 starports, unless he made 2 more in the recent couple minutes. But now he's on 5 bases. He's secured 5 base gas very safely. He has the economy to produce a lot of air and to like continuously produce it as well. And he also, to be able to produce it, he's going to be sacrificing these siege tanks. And he has 19 siege tanks right now, so that's a lot of siege tanks to get rid of. And what he's starting to do is he's going to be sending these siege tanks over and abusing the cliff of the base over here by Dongregyu. And this, it can only be done on this map because it has these special map features. And Flash is going this way because the rocks were broken, which is very cool to see. Unfortunately for Flash, his units are slightly out of position, so he's going to end up losing this planetary fortress. Oh my god. Oh my god. He's going to lose one of his bases soon. I remember that from the game. But these siege tanks over here, so let's take a quick recap again. There are now total 24 swarm hosts on the field. That is a gigantic amount. 72 supply worth of army in swarm hosts. And he has... where is it? Where's the infestors? Am I just blind, or are there no infestors on the units tab? There's 2 infested Terrans, there's 8 queens, swarm hosts, roaches, overseers, overlords, zerglings, infested Terrans, changelings, drones, larvae, locusts. And I see like 10 infestors over there. What the fuck? Huh. Alright, but he has... Alright, so just manually count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. He has, it looks like 14 it's 14 infestors, so that's 28 supply. So essentially, his entire army is in infestors and swarm hosts. And Flash has that little group of siege tanks over there, so he's not gonna Dongregyu isn't gonna have any fast moving mobile units to be able to clean up these 3 siege tanks that are gonna be harassing this base relatively shortly. I think the more common approach to mech these days is to get mutalisks, and in that case, if there is a large ball of mutalisks, the siege tank play won't work anymore. But in this case, against this non-mutalisk based force, which makes sense because Flash invested so heavily in Vikings, a mutaswitch wouldn't be that as effective because Flash already has pretty good air control. So Flash's build kind of deters mutalisks from being made, but normally mech players, or like the response to mech Terran players, would be to go mutalisks, swarm hosts, and then like Viper, Queen, and have a spore line and all that good stuff, making the game really long. But Dongregyu doesn't have that, and this is a very important thing. Like, so I guess I kind of lied when I said it could only be done on this map. It can only be done on this map when the Zerg player does not have any mutalisks out. This like siege tank harassment style that Flash is going to be doing. Oh, please repair that. Thank you. I think he's going to lose that planetary though. But that's alright, because now these 3 siege tanks, if they can get up to this ledge, which they do, like, and Marines can fire from this ledge as well. That's how close it is to this base. So it's very important to have an overlord or a creep spread over here to protect this base from being just completely abused by the high ground. I think the high ground is Terran's best friend because it's the easiest thing to abuse in the game as a Terran player ever. Ooh, fortunately Dongrigu miscontrolled his locust, but now this base, it's not mining anything, and it's gonna be taken out now. And Dongrigu's entire army is out of position. I think he's just gonna sack it, really. And this also gives Flash an opportunity to replace his siege tanks with kind of more siege tanks, but also to free up supply to make Ravens and Banshees and to tech into that very, very scary Sky Terran army. Now Dongrigu is kind of trying to make Mutalisks. Like, he has the double Mutalisk upgrades going. He has some Mutalisks to clean up the siege tanks. But Flash is going into a full blown out air army, which is really good for him. He has 4 starports. He has 6 starports. He has 4 tech labs and 1 reactor. So he can make a lot of air units at once. Now, Flash, again, he has all of his it's kind of interesting to see Flash unsiege up all of his siege tanks and to bring one big group over here to deny this base. He's essentially trading bases right now because there's no way he's going to be able to hold on to this base with the amount of infestors and swarm hosts here versus the amount of siege tanks. But there's no way that Dongrigu can protect this base as well. Those Mutalisks aren't, they're just over there. There's not really anything they can do until they get into larger numbers. But if they do get into larger numbers, then it's going to be a lot. It's going to cut into the infestor slash swarm host count that Dongrigu has. Like, this army wouldn't be nearly as big, so it would allow Flash to transition into a much safer Sky army. And as a result of having no Mutalisks, and he's not making any Mutalisks still either. He really wants this infestor swarm host army to work, but we now know 2 months later that Mutalisks are kind of good against Mech and kind of necessary too. Instead, he's making corruptors, so he has Vipers, and then he's going to abduct them into the corruptors, or he's going to use the Vipers abduct into the corruptors. I think Mutalisks are a better option because they also have the ability to be aggressive as well. And now it comes to the point where Flash has almost nothing but Raven, Viking, Banshee, Siege Tank. And these Siege Tanks are doing a great job at denying this base by Dongrigu, so he's equal bases with Flash, and that's not where you want to be ever as a Zerg player. And it's also, like, far enough away so that if Dongrigu sent his army, which is swarm hosts and infestors, to deal with it, he would expose this base, which is his really important mining 5th base, gas. And if he loses that, then it's going to be game over, because he's not going to be able to keep up with this kind of an economy. So Mutalisk switch doesn't look too great because Flash has an absorbent amount of Vikings. He has a Raven. He doesn't even need Thors because of the amount of Vikings he has and Slash is making. And he's using he has a big siege tank based army to deal with the swarm hosts, and also because of these like little chokeways, it's really hard to flank siege tanks, especially with swarm host infestor. It might be a bit easier with Zerglings, but again, it all comes down to what Dongrigu has as an army. But like, this is a monster fungal. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. He has like 14 Vikings trapped in that fungal, but it doesn't even matter. Like, he's gonna lose all of them relatively for free. He should, if Dongrigu doesn't mess up. Yeah, he's gonna lose all. Oh my god. He doesn't lose all of them, and fortunately for Flash, Dongrigu still hasn't made a spore over here, kind of strangely enough. So these Banshees are able to kill this base, and by killing this base, and now Flash is moving his siege tank army up over here because he knows Mutalisks are over here, the main army's over here, there's nothing to deal with these siege tanks. They're going to do even more damage, not only by killing structures that are kind of useless like spine crawlers, but more importantly, moving the army completely out of position so that this army can take more ground to deal with this base that is actually mining all the gas, because this base is almost mined out. So Flash is slowly creeping forward. He has a ridiculous amount of siege tanks. He's only making siege tanks and Vikings. Like, screw the Ravens. Siege tank Viking is the way to go to deal versus Mutalisks and stuff. and he's just gonna slowly siege tank leapfrog forward. And like these mutalisks, they're trying to clean up the siege tanks. But if he had more mutalisks and less swarm hosts, then this army would have a lot easier time moving around the map. Like already, Flash has a ridiculous amount of siege tanks, so that these swarm hosts no longer pose a very large threat to Flash's army because he has the critical number to defeat this amount of locusts. And now Dongrigu, so to get rid of these corruptor or these Vikings, so that he might be able to switch into mutalisks, he made a bunch of corruptors. There's actually a lot of corruptors. I think he traded out some swarm hosts and infestors slash drones to be able to make those. He definitely had to trade out on something. So like it's similar to like Viking Banshee, where you have corruptor muta and the mutalisks are gonna be doing the damage to the siege tank army. Flash very intelligently making a bunch of turrets, but he just has like too big of a Viking count. And Dongrigu doesn't have a big enough sky army to deal with this cost effectively. He really needs fungals as well. But as a result of having to decrease his swarm host count number to get all of those corruptors out, he has given up his ground control, and as a result, Flash is able to aggressively move forward, scan and clear creep, and more importantly, kill this base. So now Dongrigu has 0 bases, and his entire army is left with swarm hosts. That's all he has. There's no other mining going on for him right now, besides his 4th base, which is under siege and almost ready to be dead. And like this chokeway, this strait, is just really great for siege tanks because there's no open field, and it allows all the units to be funneled in to the siege tanks, and it also allows the siege tanks to leapfrog over the other siege tanks as a result of all the units being funneled in. So this is definitely a very, very good siege tank type map, and Flash is doing an excellent job of utilizing siege tanks through these small choking positions and through the high ground over here and over here. So he's basically using siege tanks in like every good way that he can, and that's why he made so many of them. And then he also had a lot of Vikings to make sure that Dongrigu wouldn't transition into a mutalisk slash corruptor army, which is what he was kind of trying to do. But he didn't have the economy to support it, whereas Flash does. And so now they're going for kind of a base race, but Dongrigu, he's lost this because he no longer has any economy, sadly. So this fungal does so much damage, but he has like no units left, unfortunately. So it's gonna be a GG over there. All right, so little recap: we saw a bio game on this Sejong station map, and we saw a mech game. But they're a couple months old, but the concepts do still apply, fortunately. And it seems that Mech does do a better job on this map because it does look like a much better siege tank map than Bio from what we saw Maru do. However, the locations on the high ground over here, we did not see Maru utilize drops to kind of like delay mining or do what the siege tanks were doing. It is close enough for high ground drops to deal with the mineral line and deny mining. So that's definitely an interesting concept to play around with. But for the most part, the mutalisks also posed a big threat, which can be fixed by a proper expansion pattern and sensor tower placement if you're going bio. But yeah, so I just wanted to like, I guess, give like a kind of quick review, not really quick because it's almost an hour and a half, but a nice pre-season review before this map actually hits the ladder of what this map has in store for us TvZ wise. And I hope you guys are now more comfortable with the map after looking at it for like an hour and a half and seeing only one matchup on it. So hopefully TvZ isn't so hard when the new ladder season comes out, and you'll enjoy it and be able to find creative ways to win versus Zerg players on this map utilizing all of the interesting map mechanics that the map makers have made available to us. Alright, so that about wraps it up, and I will see you guys in the next video.